This won't, yeah, perfect. Okay. If there is one thing I am, and my kids will tell you, I am punctual. My kids are not, and they remind me all the time how annoying it is that I'm punctual. But I figured since we're getting a little bit of a later start than we usually do this evening, we'll go ahead and get started, let people continue to trickle in, and I'm always trying to be mindful of your time and everything. So thank you so much for coming this evening. I truly appreciate it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stacy Ross. I am the counselor for your students in their 11th and 12th grade year. I have been here at the high school, oh gosh, this is my 26th year in education, and I've been here at the high school for 21 years. So I've done the presentation a few times. My oldest is actually a junior at Ohio State, and my youngest is a junior in high school. So I'm kind of like right in that same situation with you all and where your students are, and I've lived it once on the personal side. So, you know, I've learned a lot through my first time going through that, and I'll be going through it along with you here these next 2 years as we start to take a look at our juniors and where life might take them after high school. So tonight, my hope is to give you a lot of information, but also give it to you in a way knowing that you'll be able to come back to it and take a look at the information that I've shared, review it with your son or daughter, maybe not necessarily go over every small detail tonight because there's a lot of different avenues and a lot of different pathways that we'll talk about tonight. This is probably the most detailed presentation that we do through support services. You know, you've worked with your 9th and 10th grade counselor already on some things. Once we hit junior year, we start to get into a lot of the heavy stuff. And I know that students are already, you know, I've talked to a number of them already that are saying, you know, they can't believe they're already juniors and that before you know it, life after high school is coming. And so the goal this year is to help the students figure out what does that path look like after high school. And the thing is it can be so different for so many of them. That's why tonight's presentation is pretty detailed because we know that there's so many different choices, so many different pathways that they might take that we want to at least give you a little bit of all of the information so that way you can at least start to help guide your son or daughter as they start looking at this process and what life looks like after high school. How many of you are parents of the oldest child that you have? So this is your first time through the process of 11th, 12th grade graduate. Okay, so most of you. Anyone already been through it? You're not a rookie anymore? Okay, excellent. So if I need your help, I can just call you up on stage, right? And you can help me through this. And yeah, we'll get through it together. That's the thing that I always tell my parents is in 11th and 12th grade, we really specialize and individualize in each student, and I will make sure that I spend time individually at least once, if not more than once, with your son or daughter this year and get started on this conversation, and then make sure that in senior year, we really sit down individually. And I know that everybody's leaving here with a plan, with an idea of where they'll start, because we know that will change, but we really do get individualized and specialized, and I really see this as a process together. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to me and just say help, or if there's anything that I can do to help out. That is what I'm here for. We will get through this together, I promise. So this presentation that I go through this evening will, for the most part, be the exact same presentation that I go through with students as well. I thought it would be a good idea to get this information in your hands first so that you have an idea of what's coming up and what they're going to see during the next couple weeks through English classes here. I will also send out the recording and the slides that I share tonight in case you do want to kind of take a look at things and review things, but your sons and daughters will all hear pretty much the exact same information that we're going over tonight, with the exception of we'll get a little bit more hands-on and a little bit deeper into doing some of that exploring and actually starting to make some of those decisions. But I wanted to get this all in your hands first so that at least you guys had some information. And again, I will make sure that I share all of these slides with you, the video recording as well, because there are some clickable links in here and some tools that you'll be able to use and to take a look through. So when we start to talk about future planning, I try to tell the students that it's a process, and it's something that we really need to stop and think about. You know, so many times people will ask them, what are you doing after high school? And, you know, everybody gives the token response, I'm going to college, of course. You know, that's just kind of the expectation. And I really challenge them to stop and think about, what does life look like maybe 5, 10 years from now for you? Do you have any idea? Because a lot of times they'll look at me in silence and just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, I have no idea. So what I hope to do with them over these next 2 years is first start with that career, that self-exploration. In 9th and 10th grade, Ms. Zinke did walk them through a lot of the career exploration and tools that they had in Navient, and started that process with them. In 11th grade is really where I start to say, okay, we need to start to solidify some of that. A lot of times I'll ask students where they are in their career exploration, and sometimes they'll raise their hand and they say they know exactly that path that they're going down. And a lot of times I'll get students that kind of sit there and shrug their shoulders and say, honestly, I have no idea. So what I try to talk to them about is, let's take that step backwards. If you don't know what you want to do career-wise, the first step is to take a look at different careers, take a look at yourself, do some self-exploration, and start to match up not only things that you like to do, but things that you're good at. And what careers or what clusters does that lend to that you can start exploring, and we can start to light that path a little bit for you. Then once we have an idea of that career path, what we need to do is take a look at education. What kind of training does that require? It might be a 4-year college. It might be beyond a 4-year college with a master's degree. It might be a 2-year college. It might be some kind of training program. So find out, if you have an idea of that career, what kind of education does that take, instead of just jumping in and assuming? Now, I know a lot of times students still will not have a very clear idea of what they want to do. And they know that, or they have the expectation that I'm going to go into some kind of career field. And I'm going to continue that exploration in college. And I will say I have a handful of students that do that, and they're very successful. So it's just a kind of a process that we really at least get them started thinking about that career, then thinking about what kind of education it would take to go into that career and at least get started in that. Gathering all that information that they're researching and organizing that, and then really starting to make an action plan and say, okay, if I know this is the career I'm going to start in, and I know this is how much education I need to get started in that, where can I do that? Where could I go? Where's a good fit? And so it's just really a 2-year process that we walk through them with, and this is kind of the introduction of all of that. So the first thing that we'll focus on tonight, like I said, is the career planning. What are you good at? What do you like to do? And really diving into exploring yourself and what careers might lend well to that. I always tell students, my wish for you is that you will wake up and love what you do and be passionate about what you do, because then you will never really work too much a day in your life. It is not good. It's miserable when you wake up every day and you don't enjoy what you're doing. You don't have a passion for what you're doing. So that's kind of the approach I take with them, is let's really try and match up what you're good at and what you like to do, and what kind of career focus does that take you in. When I went into classrooms at the beginning of the year, so a couple of weeks ago in September, I started to get them linked into School Links. Have any of you heard about the transition that we've made to School Links from Navient last year? Okay, a couple of you have. So if you remember, do any of you remember that we used Navient the last couple years for career exploration for college? Okay, perfect. So in 9th and 10th grade, your students started out in Navient. This year, we made the decision to switch to School Links, which is a very similar program as Navient, but just a different company that does it, a whole different system that students get logged into. And so a couple of weeks ago, we did what they call onboarding, and we got all of your students connected to School Links. They know how to log in. Don't let them fool you. If you ask them to log in front of you, they know how to do it. So we got them connected to School Links. When they did the onboarding with School Links, it forced them to already do a career assessment, which was called Find Your Path. So it's already starting to get them connected with what kinds of things do they like to do and what are their talents and what kinds of careers would be a good match for that. So we've already done step 1 in School Links with that. I will tell you, when it comes to School Links, I have been very much impressed with their user friendliness when it comes to students. I found that a lot of them, after they took their assessments, they got their results and they were kind of talking about them and sharing about them and starting to explore in School Links already. So it's definitely a tool that I think will really lend to what we're doing this year with starting to explore those careers. So one of the things that I'll talk to students about is taking them then a step further. There's a lot of different assessments that they can do in School Links, and I've already assigned those assessments to them. So immediately when they log into their dashboard, they will already see a task list of to-dos, different assessments I want them to take, so that when I come back in a few weeks, I told them, I want these assessments done so we can really dig deeper into that information and take a look at what are some of those matches and start to know what those career clusters are that will guide their pathway for what life will take them into right after high school. So this slide just kind of mentions some of the different places in School Links that you can encourage your son or daughter to go on to in the meanwhile until I get back into those classrooms. Some different tools that they can then start to use to explore not only which clusters are they finding to be a match, but also if they already have a career path in mind. There's some great tools in School Links that will allow them to research those tools and even already start to research what kind of education will that take and where can I do that education. So this is just at least a snapshot of what that School Links page would look like in terms of the assessments that they can take. So the assessments that I had listed on the previous slide, what I will teach students is that as they go over to this activities side on the left-hand side there, that activities tab, once they click on that over there, there's going to be a box that pops up and shows them different assessments that they can go to. So if they click on the assessment, it's going to take them to the School Links assessments. And these are all of the ones that I have chosen to assign to students to complete at some point. Find your path, would you rather kind of asks them, would you rather work with people or not with people, indoors or not indoors? So it's really starting to get to some of the specifics of different careers and different jobs and pulling in what they would like to do and what they would like to experience within different career fields. Top skills are just what are they good at and what are different careers that match up with that. And then some of the other assessments, we'll start to take a look at as we get further in there. But that first piece is really that career exploration piece. And it's hard because so many students, one will say, I know exactly the career path I want to go into. And so they're ready to jump into the next phase. And some students will say they have no idea. So we're just trying to kind of walk them along this path, even though they're at such different places, just to really make sure they've really put some time and thought and have some good matches going in there for them. The next slide I will show you actually looks at one of the areas in School Links that students can actually then go in. It's the Career Center that they can click on. On the left-hand side, you'll see that the box that's called Careers is lit up. And if they click on that link on the left, this will take them to this page where they have all different types of things that they can research in terms of careers. As you can see, they start to list the most which fields have the most job openings in Ohio, if they are interested in finding an occupation that they'll get hired in real quickly. Up at the top right, so right now that kind of shows you this page right here, what are the most job openings and what are the most common careers. Up at the top right, then they can click on all those topics and find different career clusters that match up with them. What are the hot jobs right now? And then they can actually favorite things. And once they start going in there and actually attaching careers to themselves and favoriting different things, that really helps me get an idea of what path they're starting to think about going down so that I can really start helping them as they progress. So if you can also encourage them to get into School Links and make sure that they complete all of these types of assessments that I'm assigning to them and different tasks that I'm assigning to them, it really will help them maybe clarify that idea a little bit better of what careers might be a good fit for them. The other thing that I really stress to the students is we have such a valuable tool here in Mrs. Monaco. She is our career specialist that CVCC provides to us, and she is here on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And usually for the student that kind of looks at me and says, I have no idea, Mrs. Ross, what path I want to go down, I always encourage them to let me get them connected with Mrs. Monaco. She will sit down with students individually, and she will do some assessments with them one-on-one. She will walk them through the results of that. She'll start to ask them questions about what they like to do in their free time or what kinds of things they're doing with their free time, and really start to connect them with a pathway, and then also different places that they can go to get some education and training for that pathway. So if your son or daughter is out there and you're asking them, what do you want to do? And they're just kind of looking at you with that blank stare, tell them, go see Mrs. Ross. Make sure she gets you connected with Mrs. Monaco, because this is such a great resource for those students that feel like they're kind of lost and in that place. Last year I had a lot of my seniors, I think we had almost 100 seniors request to sit down with Mrs. Monaco, even at senior year, to figure that out. So she is a great resource. Make sure that if your son or daughter's in that position, they tap into that. And then obviously we've listed all of the other things that she can do as well. She just put on, helped us to put on that big job fair and career fair that we had here a couple weeks ago during lunchtime. She sets up job shadow opportunities for students. She has so many great connections, not only in this community, but in the area for all different career fields. I know that she's also working with the Cleveland Clinic because they're finally getting their job shadowing program back up for any students interested in health careers. It is a great opportunity. So she is just a wealth of knowledge and connections for them. So definitely make sure that you encourage them to set up an appointment with Mrs. Monaco as well, if they'd like to, and they can just see me for that. So we really talk about, different career exploration, and that it really is a process that students need to engage in, and they need to really self-reflect and think about talents and skills and what they're good at and what kind of career path that might start them off in, because we all know that students, can change career paths and move in and out of things. But at least we want to get them started in something that would be a good fit. One of the programs that I'll also talk to them about is the Exploring program. We have a program in the area, the Exploring program, that has different occupations that will connect students with people that are already on the job, whether it's in the police force and firefighting. I did see architecture on here as well. And so if this is an area that pertains to your son or daughter and it's something that they want to look further into, there's videos embedded in here. There's a website linked on here as well that they can go to see actual places in the area that are taking on students in these kind of programs while they're in high school, so they can really get some hands-on experience in that. I know Sagamore Hills Police Department's on that list, so lots of really close agencies that are on this website if you find that your son or daughter wants to go into one of those career fields. So that is definitely a resource that I would tap into as well. Then outside of that, one of the things we'll talk about is this on this slide is just all of the different experiences that I really encourage them to take advantage of when they're in high school. Now's the time to get out there, start exploring, start making those connections, do those job shadowing or those internship kinds of things in the summer or during the school year, so you can start to get an idea of, and I'll encourage them, this way you can start to get an idea of, is it a job you would really like? Or this way you don't go through 4 years of training and get to a job that you really realize you don't like. So believe it or not, there's a lot of opportunities for high schoolers out there to connect with people, professionals in the field already. So that's what this tab this slide links you to, is just all of the abundant resources and the different places that you can go to start to take a look at that exploration piece. So at that point, hopefully we've got them going and we've got them in some activities and we've got that path at least lit a little bit so that we can start to have an idea of, okay, once I've got that idea of where I want to start at career-wise, now what you need to do is think about what kind of education and what kind of training does that job require. Because I know a lot of times students will say, it's just expected that I go to a 4-year college, and I understand that, but I also tell them, stop and think about what that career is and what kind of training do you really need. Maybe you don't need to commit to that 4 years right off the bat and pay for it on your own. Maybe you're going into a career that you can start out with a 2-year degree and then the company will pay you to finish off that 4-year degree. So there are so many different options and pathways out there that we really try to get individualized to the student to figuring out what kind of training do I really need to start off in that. And some require more and some require less. So now we get to the point where we start to talk about that. What does that look like for you? Does it look like college? We talk about this from the standpoint of the 3 E's. So we're talking to them about enrolling. So is that a university? Is that any type of training in school that we need to start to get you looking at what kind of schools are out there to connect me with this career? We talk about employed. Is it the kind of job where you just need to get some training maybe while you're over at CVCC and then you are out into the world of work and you're starting to make those connections already? And what does that look like while I'm in high school if the career that I'm training in already will link me to a job right away? Or are you a student that's looking at enlisting? Are you looking at the military? What are your options for the military? So we really start to get them thinking about the 3 E's and where they kind of see themselves. Is it the military enlistment? Is it the employability for the job that they're training in already in high school? Or is it more of higher education and enrolling in some kind of institution? So when we start to talk to them about those students that say, I know I'm going right into the world of work, whether it's through something that they are getting at CVCC, whether it's through an apprenticeship program that you want to sign up for in some kind of career that allows you to do that, we start to talk to them about what's the difference between a job and a career. If you're leaving high school and going to employment, are you just trying to get a job or are you really looking for a career? Some of the different options that we talk to them about is not only CVCC, because that's an opportunity for not only students while they're in high school, but also after they graduate from high school. Some students don't know that you can still attend CVCC, the Cuyahoga Valley Career Center, typically for free. They have a lot of adult education programs over there that are very cost effective, but you can also still participate in the programs that they offer there as an adult if you still live in one of the 8 communities that make up CVCC. So that's a good resource for them if they're looking at a career field that they need some kind of training that is offered over at CVCC. Apprenticeship programs are another program that we talk to students about if they're going into a career field that is offered through apprenticeship. One of the things that we did was we linked here what those apprenticeship programs are, what the different careers are that look like with apprenticeships, and so we just want to get them connected to that if that's a career field that they're looking at. And then also employment that leads to post-secondary training. Like I said, sometimes you never know. You might start off in a career right after high school and that employer might pay for your education and your training. So it's really important to just stop and take a look at what do I really need to spend my money on right away, and what are maybe some of the benefits of waiting for that extended education if my career fits with that, so that I can have an employer pay for that. So there's just lots of opportunities that we really start to try to open their eyes up to that they might have never thought of before. And so again, we just really start to talk to them about if they're going into employment, let's really talk about what that looks like, job versus career, and all the different kinds of training that they can get with that as well. For the students that are thinking about enlisting, we spend some time talking to them about the 5 different branches of the United States Armed Forces. What are those opportunities? Because even within the military, there's so many different types of opportunities. Obviously, you have the full-time enlistment, you have the part-time, you have the ROTC programs that are within the colleges. And so for the student that is starting to think about military enlistment, we start to try to talk to them about what all the different types of opportunities are, because I think sometimes students just think either I'm going into the military full-time or I'm not. And that can really be so different for different students that are looking at the military. There's just so many different options. And so we at least introduce them to what those different options are, at least in this initial conversation, so that when we really do start to get individualized in those conversations, we can talk to them if they are interested in the military about what all those options are. We have a list of recruiters that we see on a regular basis that come in here that we can also get students connected with. Also within School Links, when students are looking up careers, there's an option to turn on the military focus. If students know that they're interested in the military and are looking at different careers, there's a piece that they can turn on that military and see which kind of careers kind of lend to that. as well. So very specialized in school links, and then we try to introduce this information at the beginning and then also get more specialized when we work with them individually. Because I really think they don't realize how many different opportunities there are. We also talk to them about if they are thinking about the military, it's a decision that they really need to talk through, not only with themselves and a recruiter, but definitely with their family as well. So we really try to help them make those meaningful decisions and really talk through and gathered information from lots of different resources before they make that ultimate decision. Some of the links that we have on here are just things to know before you enlist in the military, and then how you get started in at least researching some different opportunities through the military as well. And then the last E, enrollment. And this is where, I feel like the first two you can take off in a couple different paths. Post-secondary options, there's just so many different avenues that students can travel on this one. So we try to give them a little bit of a lot of information just to get them started thinking about when they start to research those careers and see these terms when it comes to what kind of education it takes. They'll start to have an idea of what the differences are between all of those. So what we like to do is talk about what are the differences between the different kinds of colleges and education and training out there. What's the difference between a 4-year college, a 2-year college, and the career and technical education vocations? Again, we try to do this with a focus of what is the career that you're thinking about starting in, and what kind of education will that career require? And that's where you start to think about these different types of schools and what are the different opportunities and options. One of the things I also like to do is connect them with different videos that, so it's not just Mrs. Ross standing up here and chirping at them all day long and hearing my voice, but I think that they really start to engage when they can see different videos. So I've embedded some different videos within these next couple slides. There's one on the bottom left here that compares a vocational versus a 2-year versus a 4-year college, and it does a nice job of just very succinctly and quickly kind of talking about what the difference is between all of those. We talk about bachelor's degrees versus master's degrees versus associate's degrees. Obviously, the 2-year schools being the associate degrees and the bachelor's at the 4-year or beyond with the master's or PhD. And so again, try to link it back to that focus of what kind of education do you need to start in that career that you're interested in. It all always seems to kind of go back to those kinds of things. And then just some of the different resources that we also try to hand to them in terms of different places that you can start exploring these. Khan Academy through College Board is a really great resource in addition to School Links. There's a lot of test prep stuff on Khan Academy. There's a lot of college exploration information. There's a video here that we've embedded, but we've also linked Khan Academy's website there as well. I've found that different students like different resources, and one resource doesn't work for everyone. So if School Links they find a little bit hard to navigate, Khan Academy is a great alternative to doing some of those research in different careers and different colleges, and then also great test prep for students on there as well, which we'll talk about ACT and SAT a little bit. But again, these slides I will be sending to you. I'm not going to show you all these videos because I know it doesn't pertain to everyone, but know that these videos are embedded in there in case this is an area that you or your student wants to hear a little bit more about. So then we start to touch on a little bit of the difference when I do start to talk about the 4-year colleges or universities. What's the difference between a public school and a private school and a university versus a liberal arts school? Because I know this can be quite confusing and overwhelming. I tell students that the best thing that they can do is when they start to research colleges, get out there and go to the campuses and ask questions and hear what the campus is saying about what they offer at those schools, because 4 years in public and private and liberal arts, they can all be so very different, and they all have just different opportunities to offer students that kind of tailor the needs to what the student is looking for. And so it's important to understand the difference between all of those, and then also do some research so they can find out where that good fit is, not only for themselves, but their career. Private colleges, I will say, in addition to the information that's listed right here, I know a lot of times families will say to me, private college, we cannot afford, and they kind of take it off their list without really researching that opportunity. My advice is to really kind of keep everything on your list, because when it comes to private colleges, they really do offer a lot of money in terms of not only merit scholarships, but different money that would help take down that initial sticker price, because the sticker price between a public university and a private university is very different. But when you get to the end, after you go through the process, you might find that private universities come out to be about the same as some of the public universities, depending upon your situation, depending upon your student situation. So don't count those public or those private schools out. Keep them on your list. Keep doing that due diligence and research, because it might be a better fit for you in terms of the career you're looking at, and even for the environment that you're looking at. But I always know that financial aid and definitely the price comes into play as a reality. But again, just something to really encourage them to keep things on their list and at least do that research and find out that information. Again, another video embedded on there that you can take a look at as well. And I always tell students, a lot of times I have my students that stress a lot about getting into, the perfect college, or getting into that competitive school, or I need to go to a school, that has a good name because that's just what people see me as. And I really encourage students to stop and think about, this is your life. This isn't a life that's the person next to you is going to be living 5 years down the road. And so you really need to figure out where your best fit is. And sometimes it's very different for different students, and that school decision, I really encourage them to not so much base it on the fact that what other people think, but really what you want and what you find is your fit and what you want to get out of it, because you're the only one that's going to be living that life. And so finding that best fit is really what my goal is with them. So what we will also start to do in a few weeks is take that career, take that education that they need. And for those students that are saying, okay, I really think my career is leading me into a 4-year school or a 2-year school, what we will start to do is help them to identify a list of schools to start with. And how we do that is by getting them to stop and think about all of these different things when it comes to schools. Are you looking for a school that's close to home, or that, as my daughter is saying right now, as far away from Ohio as possible? Are you looking at a large campus? Do you just thrive in those kinds of environments where there's all different kinds of activities? Or are you more of a smaller campus person, where you have smaller classes and you just do so much better in that kind of educational setting? Are you looking at in-state versus out-of-state? Or are you looking at different admission standards, like you're really trying to get into a school that is competitive and selective? Or are you not so much worried about that kind of thing? So all of these things we really ask students to just stop and really think about. That's how we start to narrow down that list of schools that can just seem so overwhelming, because there's thousands of schools throughout this country, let alone, other countries that are out there if your son or daughter is interested in that. So these are really the topics that I ask them to stop and think about and ask for the answer for themselves. Where do I stand when it comes to these different kinds of things? The other thing that I really like about School Links is, and I will guide them through this, is that there is a school search tool that will help them to do this, that will help them to narrow down that list. So I'll take them to School Links, and we'll go to the colleges tab on the left, and we will go to this screen where we start to answer some of those questions for those students that are going to be looking for a 2 or a 4-year school. So up at the top, you'll see that when you click on this drop down here, it's going to ask you, are you looking for a 4-year or a 2-year? Or just a certificate program? Are you looking at private and public, or one or the other? It'll ask you just lots of different questions to stop and think about. Then we're going to go to the campus tab over here, and it's probably going to ask them, do you want to go to a large campus or a small campus, smaller classes or larger classes? So as they go down the line, it's going to ask them to answer those questions on those topics that I just had on that other slide. Once they are done answering all those in School Links, then it will start to generate a beginning list of schools that match those criteria as they stand right now. We all know that those opinions and feelings might change a little bit, and they can always go back to these and redo them. But at least this will start to give you a starting point of schools that match up with different things that your son or daughter is saying they're interested in. Do you want to make sure you can travel abroad at your school, or just any of those other kinds of opportunities or sports or that kind of thing. So I just try to force them to really sit down and start to think about what that life looks like for them and where they kind of see themselves after high school if they need to go on to some kind of higher education. Once we have that list to start with, because I know that was probably the most difficult thing with my oldest, was just coming, where do you even begin? Once we did that and answered some of those questions and used those tools to start to have a list to work off of, then what I really encourage students to do, and what I did with my own son, is okay, now we need to go out there and gather some information about these different schools. How do we do that? What are the resources that are out there? The most important thing that I tell to students is once you've got that list going, get out there and get on that campus. There is no substitute for getting out there on a school day, seeing what the vibe is, going in and looking at different classes, hearing the tour guide tell you about different opportunities, what their campus life is like, and just seeing if this feels like home. Does this feel like where I can see myself for the next 4 years? My biggest fear is that they don't do that, and then they get on a campus and they realize this is not my vibe or this is not my place. And so campus visits, I just think, are absolutely critical. Now, I know sometimes it's hard to get to those campus visits, and so we talk about on this slide virtual visits and where they can go, some links that they can go to actually get to those virtual campus visits. But that is probably the single most important thing that I really encourage students to do. Miss Wenzel and I, the current senior class counselor, are also trying to plan as many campus visits as we can this year. Obviously budget pending, and with the school bus situation, that seems to be a little interesting right now, but as much as we can, I actually surveyed the students when I went in a couple weeks ago to see if there were certain campuses that they would like to get to, and so we're going to be working on that and trying to get to a couple of different campuses here as well this year. Anything we can do to help them get on that campus and start to get an idea of different feels and where it feels like home. There's lots of college fairs. I always tell students, please keep an eye on your email, because I will email them all the time about different opportunities that are coming up in the area that will lend to this entire process over this next year. So lots of virtual college fairs, lots of actual college fairs that they can go to. We also have college representatives that come here to Nordonia High School. I already showed students how to find on School Links. On their dashboard, there's a topic that says school events, that they can actually click on school events and find out what college reps are coming here, what day they will be here, what period they will be here. They sign up right on School Links and let their teacher know they won't be in class that day, and then they can come and sit down, usually in very small groups, with a representative from any different college that is coming, and ask them questions, or just hear what information they have to share. Ask them about if they offer the majors or different activities that they're looking for. So that's kind of another great way for students to get connected with different colleges and gather different information to start to narrow down that list, see if that's something they want to apply to. Again, we talked about determining the must-haves they have for college. There are also these institution guides here that I've listed. In Ohio, there are different guides for either the public universities in Ohio that will show you, let me see if I can get down here, that will show you different statistics and data from each of the public schools. So I wanted to put that link on there so that you could at least get an overview, some general information if you're looking at all the different public schools, so you can compare those if they have different majors. There is also a 4-year in Ohio private guide that does the same exact thing, gives you some data, gives you some information, gives you cost, student attendance, all of those kinds of things, different things to think about when you're talking about independent or private colleges. So these are two really good tools that we've also linked in there too. And then also that net price calculator, because again, a lot of times you'll hear about the sticker price, what's tuition and what's room and board, but you have to take into consideration your financial situation and maybe how that will also affect the sticker price. And that net price calculator actually does a pretty nice job of estimating what you would pay at different colleges. So there's a link right there to that as well. And then what I tell students is create a chart, and we've linked one here that they can use, but start to create a chart of those schools that you're feeling like, okay, I think I want to do some more exploration of this school because I feel like it might be a good fit. Start to make a chart so you can compare each of those schools and really start to narrow that down. It's just a long, sometimes process that I really try to guide students and get them moving through this year on their own, because I know, that's a decision that not only they have to make for themselves, but they should also include you in that too. But I do try to get them to kind of start moving in that direction and help you out with that a little bit. Oh, I apologize if you can't see that. College visits, again, I said that's probably my most important piece of the college exploration process. And so we put together a slide that you can do college virtual tours on, but that will also give you some information on that website about different things to ask when you're on college visits and good questions that will help you really determine if that's a good fit for you. Okay, admissions basics. When we start to talk about different types of universities, obviously there are lots of different types of applications. There are different processes depending upon the type of school that you're going to. When you're looking at a two-year institution, it's a pretty basic application process. As long as you have a high school diploma or will be getting a high school diploma, and you are a citizen, you will be accepted into those two-year institutions. So for those students that are looking at, even maybe they're thinking about just getting started at a two-year institution like Tri-C or Lakeland Community College, because you're going to pay about 60% of the cost of tuition than you are at a full four-year university. I have lots of students that have to keep financials in mind. And so one of the things that we talk about is that opportunity to start out at a two-year school and pay a much less bill, a much smaller bill when it comes to tuition and that kind of thing. So two-year institutions, again, pretty simple process, and it's a great opportunity for those students looking to save some money and at least just get started in that four-year degree and then transition on to whatever that four-year college looks like to finish out that bachelor's degree. When it comes to four-year institutions, these are the things that I will start to talk to students about, because when you are applying right at the beginning of senior year, they need to know what kinds of things colleges are going to look at to evaluate whether they're admitted to their institutions or not. Obviously, there's an application. Next year, I'll talk to students much more in depth about the Common App versus the direct-to-institution app. That's always a fun conversation to have. Common App is pretty intense for some students, but we get them through it. We will talk about the transcript because colleges obviously request transcripts. They take a look at what are your final grades only. They don't see your quarter grades. What are your final grades in all of your classes? They will take a look at your class rank. They will take a look at, we do post our community service hours on there so that they can see how many community service hours they have. We do not post list anymore the ACT and SAT test scores on our transcript. So many of the schools are starting to go test optional, which I'll talk a little bit more in depth about in a minute. And we wanted to make sure that for those students that decided not to send a test score, that we didn't accidentally put that on there in case they didn't want those scores sent, because there are so many schools that are starting to go test optional now after COVID. So we talked to them about that transcript and what that's going to look like when those schools get that and they start to look at that to make decisions about admissions. Test scores, obviously, some schools will look at that, some will not. The thing that I will encourage students to do, the test optional always seems to be a big question, and so I encourage students when they go to those campus visits or when they're researching those schools, find out what the school's current policy is in terms of testing. Do they require that ACT and SAT scores are sent to them? Do they not require those? Are they test optional? If they are test optional, meaning you can choose to send your test score or not, how does that affect you in terms of admission? Does it make your admission odds more difficult to get in or less difficult? And really asking them about what their most recent incoming class was, how many students were admitted based on test scores, how many students were not. The one thing that I have found is that when it comes to the student that's really looking at a competitive or a selective four-year college, this is a discussion that you really need to sit down and have and research what each school that you're applying to, what their policy is on test optional. The reason I say that is, for example, Ohio State. I just went to an Ohio State update a couple of weeks ago. And one thing that we asked them about was, are they continuing their test optional policy? And they said yes. And the thing that I thought was interesting was I had some of my higher level seniors not get into Ohio State, for example, last year with over 4.0 GPAs, and I could not figure out what was going on with that. And what they said was, for the students that did not send a test score in, and that could be for a couple of different reasons. I encourage students, if your test score does not help you get into that school as much as your GPA does, don't send that test score. You want to give yourself the best chance possible. And so what they said was, those students that didn't send those test scores, what they really expected to see was that you had 5 years of math credit on your transcript, a fourth year of a science credit, and 4 to 5 years of a foreign language. And so they have different standards when it comes to the student that does not send in that test score. So that's just a quick little example of why it's so important that you ask the schools those policies, because that is something I wouldn't have even known about unless I stopped to ask them, what is the difference if you don't send your test scores? Is there something more you're looking for? So take the time to just ask those schools about their test optional policies, if especially you're looking at those competitive or selective schools. Obviously, we talked to them about their essay and their personal statement, which is on all of those Common App applications. Recommendation letters, we'll start to talk to them about that as well. Colleges that require recommendation letters really want those to come from a teacher that has seen them in the classroom most recently and in the highest level class that they've taken. They really want some reflection from those teachers and how they perform in the classroom for that. We will start to talk to them about interviews and auditions, which are really for pretty selective schools or for pretty selective majors, the FAFSA, and then also we'll send the school profile along with that, because they want to see what are our average test scores and how does that student that's sending them a transcript compare to the average that we're seeing at our school. So we just start to kind of talk to them about some of those differences and some of the different things that some of the schools are looking at. I want to put it all out there for them so that it just is an indicator to them that as they're researching these schools, take the time to ask these questions so that they know what they're getting into when they're applying to that school and they know what that expectation is. Now is a great time to do that because they have not signed up for those senior classes yet. So if there's an expectation to take a 4th or a 5th level of something, they still have time to get that in and to even come and talk to me about that as well if we need to do some fancy footwork on that. So we will, again, start to talk to them about the application. The other thing that I wanted to show you on here is that we have linked what are the different types of applications. When it comes to early decision, early action, and regular applications, there's some resources on here linked for you about timelines with that and different things to talk about and expect with those. Again, I know that doesn't apply to everyone, but those links are embedded in there so that you guys can start to talk about that a little bit more. Early decision, those are very binding contracts, and so we always tell students you can only apply to one school early decision. That is basically saying if you accept me, you're signing a contract that says you have to go to that school. Early decision will give you a little bit of a competitive foot when it comes to a school that might be a little bit more selective and might be a little bit of a reach school for your son or daughter. So early decision is something to talk about a little bit, but I always tell students, if you're going to apply to a school early decision, you better be 150% sure that that's the place for you and that you can afford it, because by turning in that application, you're actually signing a contract with those schools. And they have a little bit of different timelines. Early action, early decision, they're typically going to look for applications no later than November 1st. Of senior year. And so we'll start to talk to students about that for planning ahead if they are looking at those kinds of schools or those kinds of applications with schools. And again, these are all resources that you're going to be able to go back to and reflect on as we're working through the process this year. The essay, we start to talk to them a little bit about that. We will also have teachers working with them during their senior English class to help them with their essay so that they can get that on the Common App and get that submitted at the beginning of their senior year. We'll also have different institutions coming in that will help students with their essay, different workshops that they can do. So that'll be not until senior year. Again, we remind them about that transcript and what that looks like and what colleges will see. One really cool thing that I will tell you, I taught students when I went in there a couple weeks ago that they can actually go into School Links now and see a copy of their unofficial transcript. Now, anytime you want. So you have access to that if you ask your son or daughter, show me how Mrs. Ross told you to find your unofficial transcript. They should be able to do that on School Links. If they forgot, send them back to me and I'll show them again. But I think that's a really cool feature that you will always have access to the most updated transcript on there if you ever want to take a look at that or have any questions about their current GPA or anything like that. The recommendation letter, again, we talked about that a little bit in terms of who to select for that, but we'll start reviewing that with them. Test scores, we talked a little bit about test optional. We'll start to talk about the differences between the ACT and the SAT. Most schools will select either test if they require a test score. So I tell students, take them both once. Get a baseline for both of them. See which one you do better on, and if there's one that you shows a little bit better of who you are as a student, then maybe focus on that one and retaking it if you're a student that's really going to need a test score for admission. So all of our students will actually take an ACT for free, our juniors, here on March 14th. Students do not need to register for that separately. We will get them registered for that. They do not need to pay for that. That is the only time they will take it here at Nordonia for free. If they need to retake that or want to take it again, you would just need to go to ACT's website and get registered for and pay for that and find different locations around here. They still will not let us give that here on Saturdays because they have too many in the area, but I keep asking every year because I think it would be beneficial to the students to take it in an environment that they're comfortable with, so I'll keep trying. But this gives you an idea of ACT test fees beyond the one that they take on March 14th here. Again, when it comes to SAT, if you'd like to register for that and give that one a try, I tell students try them both, see which one's a better reflection of your abilities. These are just some recommendations that we'll start to go through. There's also a test prep resource in here that is linked, that we have linked free resources to get ready for these tests and to just do some free practices and for what you're going to see on those. We also have any paid programs around here that we have sent students to and we have found that have been very beneficial. So that is a good resource for you if you have a son or daughter that really needs to maximize that ACT or that SAT score in the college admission process. There's a good resource on there for you for that as well. But again, if students have any questions about that kind of thing, tell them to come see me because we will really individualize that kind of discussion this year. Financial aid, I don't get too deep into this because senior year is really where we'll talk about financial aid. We just go over a little bit of the basics, the differences between federal money, the differences between grants and loans and scholarships and all of that. The only thing that I tell them for this year, start looking for scholarships. There's lots of scholarships out there that you can start applying for now. Get onto one of these scholarship research tools online, get your information into their database, and they will start sending you scholarships that they feel like you're a good fit for, that students can apply for now. Also within School Links now, students can actually, if they apply for a scholarship, you can actually send an official copy of your transcript right through School Links to the scholarship committee if they submit or supply an email. Students can go ahead and send that. But scholarships are something that they can actually start looking for right now, but we'll get deeper into financial aid next year. And then this is just another informational video from Khan Academy that starts to talk to them about the scholarship search and where to look for those. At the end of the day, I just tell them it's going to be a process and we're going to go through it together. Use all of your resources. We've listed a lot of them tonight, but use all of these resources to start gathering that information. Just be a part of that exploration process and get going on it because you'll be surprised how fast these next 2 years go. And the more you can do now, the less stressed you'll be next year. The more ready you'll be for senior year to come in. You'll have your list. You'll know where you're applying. We'll help you get those applications done and out by November 1st. So that senior year is a lot less stressful. So the more they can get going on now, the more resources they can utilize. That's what we just encourage them to do. And then we just start to focus on, okay, so what do you do now? What are the things that we need to start to check off that list? Stay in the game this year, check progress book and I tell them this every time I see them, check progress book and email every single week at a minimum. All of the opportunities that I find out about, whether it's community service that they can do, community service opportunities, summer programs, scholarships, anything that I find out about, I will email to them. So they should be glued to their email this year. We're working out a few kinks. Have most of you been getting my emails through school links? Okay, yes. Do I see any no's? Okay. We've been working out some kinks with school links where I love school links already, but there's a few things, a few hiccups we've been having. So if you are not getting my emails, just email me and let me know so I can make sure that I connect with school links and make sure that you're getting all those emails. Many of the things that I send to students, I will also send to you because I'm a parent too, and I sometimes need to remind my daughter to, oh yeah, this came through. Let's take the time to look into that. So I get that. So you should be getting emails from me on a pretty regular basis as well, with all of those opportunities that students can take advantage of. I know that was a lot. You're probably overwhelmed. Don't be. I'm here. We're in this together. This I will make sure that I email to everyone so that you have this resource to go back to whatever step you are in the way of this whole process this year, so that you can use it as a resource and reflect back on it. You know I always tell the students, you know where I live during the day, so please come see me. That's what I'm there for. I really take it very personally and take it to heart that my goal is to make sure when all of them walk across that stage, they know and have a plan for what that life looks like afterwards. It's just a matter of getting them going on it, and that's what I'm here for too. Are there any general questions for the good of the group? If it's a personal question, I will stay afterwards here and be down front to answer any questions, but are there any general questions that you have? You're like, I just honestly have no idea everything we just went through. Thank you for coming tonight. You have my email. If you didn't already, it's right up there. You have my phone number. Please reach out to me with anything that you need. Again, I will make sure that I stay after and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.